So here's the first easy question, Jeff. How do men and women explore their emotions so that we can get along better?
I think we have to create a cultural container for emotional release and for a deepened experience of an emotional awareness. You know, we know when we're hungry, but oftentimes we don't know when we're angry. We have to develop, create a cultural conversation and a container that allows for this conversation to happen fluidly and naturally, and in that place we can hear one another in ways that right now I think we can't.
So in our daily lives, if we want to become more at peace with our own emotions, where does one start?
You know, you can use meditative practices if you use them in an effort to develop awareness of what's going on emotionally.
But you're at the office,
that's not enough.
You're busy, or you're at home with kids. The meditative practice is not always available. So what's like a 5-minute tool that you can use to start that work slowly and to be better in your own skin?
I come back to emotional release, and this is where it's difficult. If we're not in an office environment that supports that kind of release practice, containment becomes the only option. But we can do it at home, and therapy is not the only option. Some people, often the people who are the most traumatized, most in need of support, are the ones who can't afford therapy because they have a harder time functioning in the marketplace. So there are still ways for them, though. You know, authentic movement practices.
What is that? Dancing?
Just
freely?
moving freely and allowing feelings, expressions, sound to move through you, so you can become a more integrated, self-possessed person. Yoga practice. Quite often for people, they do yoga in a way to get away from the toxic body beast. You can do yoga in a way that's more integrated. You can use the asanas or the positions or the postures as an opportunity to excavate the material you're holding, bring it to the surface, and I call it barking dog yoga. You can be on the mat.
Barking dog yoga.
Yeah.
So to let it all out.
Just let it all out instead of a containment model. So you're releasing feelings, you're expressing language. Now you have to be in a studio that supports that, or you do it on your own, but there are opportunities for release all the time in our lives.
Like, can a 5-minute walk be a release?
Absolutely. But allow yourself when you're walking to be in touch with your feelings. Don't shame and shun your feelings. Don't get trapped in an avoidant consciousness.
Well, we're really good as humans, and especially women, I find, to feel guilty all the time. The guilt, not good enough, not performant enough, not doing enough. So how does one, even if we go for a 5-minute walk, what do you tell yourself to get out of that guilt?
I mean, we have a lot of work to do around collective shame. I mean, most people are walking around these magnificent humans, these fields of possibility that we are hating themselves, filled with, and part of it is because we're holding so much toxic emotion that turns inward against the self. But we've also internalized this message collectively that we're not good enough, we're not smart enough, we're not, and the spiritual world's confusing us because there's so much bashing of the ego. And yet what we need is a healthy, asserted, strong ego in order to value ourselves and do good work in the world. So we have to, start to create a cultural conversation that's really supportive of talking about shame, for example. I talk in my writing about shame circles, where everybody gets together and talks about the thing they're most ashamed about. And in the doing, they find by listening to others that they're having the same experience that they have. And it keeps going like that. In the gender terrain, we need to create environments where men and women talk to one another, when women can acknowledge their suffering, what they've experienced at the hands of men. Men can acknowledge their suffering, so that we, again, have an opportunity to bridge to each other. When you talk about what happened to you, when you talk about what wounded you, when you talk about what you feel, you send a message to the inner world, to the shamed inner world, that
the inner world, like your own
that
heart.
You're carrying, you send a message to yourself that you matter. The moment you speak up, you send a message to you that you're something more than just a shamed being, that you're one who's worthy of making this assertion.
And every human being is worthy.
Every human being is a magnificent realm of possibility. Every human being that I've ever encountered carries an extraordinary degree of uniqueness, a sacred purpose, a calling, an offering, something that they're here to bring into this world. But if we hate ourselves, it's very hard for us to activate that.
What do you want to tell to young boys who are suffering, who don't feel like they can speak up? Because it's not easy and it's not welcomed in their surroundings. What do you tell them?
To find somebody somewhere who they can talk to, even to, if they have to use social media to express themselves. create a blog, a diary, a journal, something that allows them to not, you know, when we hold all this material in, we isolate ourselves. All we know is separateness. We have to encourage young people, if they're in an environment where they're not allowed to express themselves, find another way to express themselves. Do it in private if you have to. Move that material. Own who you are. If people around you aren't going to be kind and considerate and open to that, trust me, at some point along the way,
One ally.
somebody will come, and then more will come. You just have to get through this phase. And it's important to express the material somewhere, somehow, in written form, because if you don't, it's going to hold you back on every level.
All right, Jeff, so we wake up in the morning, most of us feel like there's an inner combat or war going on inside us. We're not feeling top shape. We have a whole day to go through, and we want to do the best that we can, but we feel pulled in so many directions. How does one take a little step in their daily lives to be able to allow themselves to feel this and to help others along the way? Because it happens without even us knowing it, right? What's your take on this?
I think allowing ourselves to express it is important. Conversation. So you say, "How are you?" to somebody at the workplace, and they give you a very short shrift answer, and you look at them and you say, "Well, how are you really?" Just very simply, just invite them to say a little bit more about their experience in their day. Maybe they won't invite you to do the same, but maybe somewhere along the way somebody will. And so we start to kind of make those kinds of connections. We create a family of connectiveness, even in the most unexpected place. I've been in so many environments where I was absolutely sure nobody was interested in talking about their feelings, but I couldn't stop talking about mine, so I would. And somehow somebody would appear in the middle of nowhere who was hiding who they really were in every way, who'd be just so happy to find somebody else they could talk to.
Living in a popular culture, do you find that young girls and boys have enough mentors who encourage them to speak up?
No, I think that we need way more role models from the awakening movement, models of awakening. People who
What do you mean by awakening?
I mean people who are still bridging survivalism, who are still practical and assertive and living in reality and grounded and they have to pay the bills and all, but who have started to inch in the direction of more of a heartfelt, opening, less adapted, more authentic way of being. Those role models, I've had many of them who were startling to me, men who were very solid, very rooted, but also very compassionate and very feeling-based, like Justin is, I think, and who move in the world in that way. We need so much more in the way of role models like that. My role models growing up were John Wayne, who was an actor. I didn't really know anything about who he was. And my grandfather, who was a very, salesman, effective, people loved him. I saw my grandmother as somehow insignificant until I had a heart-opening experience years later and suddenly saw her in a completely different light. Suddenly I saw this beautiful 98-pound woman who was more courageously holding the space for the family's pain, suffering, heartbreak, opening the heart, heartbreak. My grandfather was very armored and cut off a little bit. In a way it was, he had a struggle in the world. It was still something. But there's another way in which he was kind of avoiding the more uncomfortable feelings. She held the space for all those feelings. And she was a role model for me at that stage in my development of what it meant to awaken to the heart, to live from the heart, to move from the heart, and that it is possible, and I've learned this in my own experience, to live from the heart and also be solid and grounded in the world. And I think that's the next stage for humanity.
Thank you for all your insight.
Great, thank you.